So page 5, hopefully you're getting these practices in. I know some of you were wasting a lot of time yesterday, lots of chatting, but we got to get these practice in. So just so for review's sake, remember the slope of parallel lines are the same. And the slope of perpendicular lines are opposite reciprocals. So the opposite means they have we change the sign, right? And the reciprocal means that we've flipped the fraction. So the reason I write things over and over again is because it's one of those things that you have to know, you have to remember, right? So m is the slope, right? If we need help remembering that. So the slope of parallel lines are the same. So if we have two of the same slopes, those lines are parallel, or perhaps the same line. If we have a different sign, so one's positive and one's negative, and one's a flipped fraction of the other, like 2 1/2, or 5 1/5, or 5/3 and 3/5, right? Flipping the fraction, then those lines are perpendicular. So these last two on page 5 are just like the other ones, except it's just set up a little bit differently, but we have to use our slope formula to find them. If you need to recall our slope formula, our slope m is equal to y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. When we have any 2 points, x1, y1, and x2, y2. All right, so if we remember which pair or which of the pair is our y values, we can figure this out, right? y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. That's all this means. So slope of segment AB is equal to y2, which is 5, minus y1, which is 3, all over, and this is the one you have to be careful with, x2, which is 1, minus x1. So we need to be sure we put that -1 in here. I think that was the most common mistake I was seeing yesterday, is that if we had a negative point, then we were just writing 1 minus 1. Well, that would be 0, but this is not 0 because we have to switch. It's actually what on the bottom? What's 1 plus 1? 2. And here 5 minus 3 is 2. The other thing I saw is that some of you were leaving it like this, but you need to simplify your fractions to be sure you can compare your two slopes, right? What's 2 divided by 2? 1. So the slope of segment AB is 1. So we're already thinking in our head, if we get 1 for the slope of CD, these two lines are what? Parallel, right? If they're the same, they're parallel. If you don't have these notes down again, get them down. If our slope of CD is what to make it perpendicular? -1. Excellent. So we're already thinking, already anticipating, right? We're using those critical thinking skills. So our slope of segment CD, we still have y2, which is 7, minus y1, which is 3. And that's all over x2. This is another thing I saw. I saw some of you using this as y2, and then x2 you were jumping over here. So be sure you're using x2, y2 is the same point. So x2 is -2 minus x1, which is 2. So 7 minus 3 is -4. And -2 minus 2, we're getting more negative. Our signs are the same. So we find the sum. What's 2 and 2? 4, but it is negative, right? So -4 divided by -4 is 1. So these two slopes are the same, which means these two lines are, yes, what'd I do? Oh, it's not, is it? Thank you. That saves us. 7 minus 3 is 4. We're about to go on to the next step, but a positive divided by a negative isn't positive, it is negative. So this is what we're anticipating to be what type of line? Or intersection? Perpendicular. These two lines are perpendicular because the slopes are opposite reciprocals. Caitlin, I stuck your Chromebook right in your binder, honey. All right, thanks for catching that, TJ. That was super helpful. All right, so now we're doing the same thing with AB and CD on the last one. So our slope of AB is y2, 5, minus y1, 8, all over -6, which is x1, minus x2. So here we have 5 minus 8, which is what? This one is -3. -6 minus 3, it's getting more negative, so we've got -9. These become positive, and we can also divide them both by a factor of what? 3. So we have 1/3. Make sure you're simplifying those fractions. Nope, it was -3, but the bottom was -2, so negative divided by a negative, they both became positive. Does that make sense? Thank you for checking on me there. All right, so the slope of CD we need to find. Remember, it's important that you're showing how you found the slope, not just writing the slope down. I want to see your work. It's an important part of the process, right? 8 minus 7, right? Y2 minus Y1 divided by -3. There's X1 minus, and then your -6. This is where we get tricky. We have to keep, change. So 8 minus 7 is 1. -3 plus 6 is 3. So these slopes are the same, which means they have to be what? Parallel lines. So now if you haven't finished page 5, or if you haven't finished anything before that, make sure you're going back and practicing those on your own. So we are going to turn to page 6, and I think these are going to be even easier than yesterday. Well, than part of yesterday. So we're deciding whether they're parallel, perpendicular, or intersecting. Intersecting, remember yesterday I was alluding to this as another name for neither. They're not parallel. They're not perpendicular. They're neither. They're intersecting, but at a different angle than 90 degrees. Okay? They're going to run into each other, but not at a 90-degree angle. The other thing that we have to recall here, parallel. Remember, this is the same. Perpendicular. These are opposite reciprocals. It's important that you know the reciprocal just means a flipped fraction. Intersecting is really going to be our neither here. We also need to recall our slope-intercept form, right? Y equals mx plus b. This is your slope, right? M is your slope. So I would expect you to do a little bit of work, show a little bit of work. So I'm going to circle my M and say of this line, my M is negative 1/6. Of this line, my slope is negative 6. Are these two things the same? Are these two things the opposite? No, they're not. They're the reciprocal, but they're not the opposite. They're both negative. The opposite would mean one's positive and one's negative. So these have to be neither, which we're going to call intersecting on this one because that is what they ask us to do. Determine if the given pair of lines is parallel, perpendicular, or intersecting. Okay? So here again, we're looking at our M's. This slope is what? 1/3. This slope is negative 1/3. Are these the same? No. Are these the opposite? Yes, they are the opposite. One's positive, one's negative, but are they the reciprocal? No, so these are also intersecting. What is your slope of the first line in number 2? 9/4. Remember, that is the coefficient of x because this is in y equals form. This slope of the second line is negative 4/9. Are these slopes the same? Nope, so they're not parallel. Are they the opposite? Yes. Are they also the reciprocal? Yes. So these are opposite reciprocals, which means they are perpendicular. Do you see where we're going here? It's not too bad, right? We just have to determine what M is in all of these. So M is negative 1/3 and M is what here? Negative 3. They're not the same and they're not the opposite. So right away we're calling these intersecting lines. So here our slope is negative 2. Here our slope is 2. They're not the same. They are the opposite, but they're not what? They're not reciprocal. So again, we're calling these intersecting lines. Please, please, please be sure you're showing a little bit of work so you can use these notes when it comes quiz time, right? So here your slope is negative 2/3. Here your slope is, 3/2. So they're not the same. They are the opposite and they are the reciprocal. So they're opposite reciprocals, which means they are perpendicular. Is anyone still out in left field wondering what in the world is going on in this classroom? Or are we doing okay? You are? It's not good. All right. This is a little tricky. What's the slope of this line? 1. Good. I thought that was going to catch up. Here our slope is also 1. Are these the same? Yeah. Yes. So they are parallel. Same for here, right? Except instead of our slopes being 1, our slopes are negative 1. So these are also parallel. Now, if one was 1 and one was negative 1, they would be what? Perpendicular, right? That's the tricky one flipping. All right. So page 6 looks pretty much identical, as does 7. Oh, I'm sorry, that was page 6. So page 7 looks identical, as does 8, 9, and 10. So do you want to fly through these? 8, 9, and 10? You got 20 minutes. Oh, wait, it's not identical. I see some issues we're going to have. So 9, 10, and 11 are the same. I'm just going to go through and kind of circle my slopes. This is how I would find my slopes, right? What happens with number 12, though? Soon as you get comfortable, this is not in slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So we have to do what? Rearrange. This is where your previous learning comes in. You have to move your x term to the side. This leaves you with 6y. Some of you need this practice. Equals, bring down your variable term, bring down your constant. Because some of you need to retake the last quiz. I would suggest doing it in the morning so you don't wait a whole over break, but you do you, I suppose. So I'm dividing everything by what? 6 here. So y is equal to, there's a -1 here, so -1/6x plus 5. So now I have my slope of this line, and I've got to rearrange this. How do I make this just a y? Dividing everything by 3. So y equals 6x minus 2. So here is my slope. These are perpendicular. Good. So this is requiring you to do one more step in a couple cases. So I can walk you through a few more of these for extra practice. So this one we have our slope in, but we need to rearrange our first equation. So I would subtract our variable term from both sides to move it to the right. Don't forget this negative here. This is what I see a lot of. A lot of you guys just bring down the y. It has a negative in front of it. So it's -y is equal to our variable term, which is -5x, and our constant, which is +4. Then we have to take the opposite of everything. So y equals 5x minus 4. So here is our slope. So what would you say about those two slopes? They're opposite reciprocals, right? Yeah. So these two lines are perpendicular. Now, if you screwed up and did not take the opposite of these, they would look like they were just intersecting. But that's not the case. Okay. So, ooh, I like 16, but let's do 14 before we do 16. -3x.
Why would you like to see? That makes me wonder.
-y is equal to -3x plus 2. Same thing here. Don't forget that that negative is in front of it. So we've got to take the opposite of everything. All the terms, not just the slope, although the slope is what's important in this case, right? And here we're subtracting 12x. So we have -4y is equal to -12x plus 4. Divide everything by -4. So y, this is a y, it kind of looks like it, equals 3x minus 1. So here's my slope. These slopes are the same. So my two lines are parallel. All right, you can do this, right? What's the slope of this line? What's the slope of 15? What's the first line slope? 1, not x. The coefficient is 1. What's
-1.
and -1. So these two are
Perpendicular.
fantastic.
What's
Perpendicular.
Ah.
All right, this next one. If I don't have an x term, what must be being multiplied by x? If x was being multiplied by x, I'd have x squared. Nothing's being multiplied by x. So what do we call nothing?
0.
0. So here our slope is 0. Now if I don't have a y, I have a problem, right? So think about what these two lines look like. If I drew out my y-axis, right, and my x-axis, if I'm drawing this for me to see it, I don't need to see this, but you do, so you should probably be drawing this too.
I'm drawing it.
Y equals 6. Well, 6 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So y equals 6 right here, and it equals 6 all the way across here. Is that a slope of 0? Yes, that is 0 fun, right? Now here's what happens. Where does x equal -1? Well, just to the left of my y-axis. So all of these points here are where x equals -1.
Fine.
Fantastic. This slope is undefined. Undefined. We know that if we have a 0 slope and an undefined slope, these two lines are perpendicular, just like our x and y axis.
I'm too good. Oh my grandma, because you can't divide.
Because you cannot divide by 0. It would be a number divided by 0 would be our slope, right?
My grandma.
Whereas our slope here would be 0 because it's not going up at all, divided by any number. All right, so you've got 8, 9, 10 for practice. 8 looks really nice. 9, you've got to rearrange a little bit. Same with 10. 8, 9, 10. Should be real quick. No, not.
Nothing.